After 3 years of marriage, my wife, Chloe, never let me call her by her pet name in bed. She said only her first love could call her that. "You have no right to call me that," she would say, her voice cold. "It's reserved for him." Later, she tore up the letters from her first love in front of me. I thought I had finally won her heart. It wasn't until I saw her send her own private photos to her first love's boss, just to help him get a promotion, that I understood. She had never forgotten him. One by one, the screenshots of the chat history filled my screen. They were scandalous, explicit photos. A woman, clad only in a bath towel, knelt on a bed. Her red lips were slightly parted, her eyes a seductive, hazy blur. Below the long stream of images were countless comments, "Need the source," and "DM for more." There was a faint birthmark on the woman's shoulder. It was, without a doubt, my wife, Chloe. But she hadn't been home in a month. A month ago, Chloe left for work as usual. While tidying up, I found a letter on her vanity. The paper was slightly yellowed with age, but had been preserved with meticulous care. It was from her college sweetheart, Julian. They had broken up after graduation when he chose to go abroad. In the letter, he called her Chlo. In our 3 years of marriage, in moments of deep passion, I would sometimes call her Chlo too. She told me it was her pet name. I thought it would bring us closer. But every time I said it, her expression would turn icy, and she would pull away. "Don't call me that again." So it wasn't a pet name. It was a reminder of him. A wave of resentment washed over me, but a flicker of hope remained. I wanted to hear her explanation. That evening, Chloe walked through the door. She was massaging her neck, but her movements stopped the moment she saw the letter on the table. She knew. I sat on the sofa, waiting. I despise suspicion in a relationship. I wanted clarity. I wanted to know why, after 3 years of marriage, she still kept a letter from her first love. Chloe walked to the table and stared at the letter for a few seconds, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Then, she pulled a lighter from a drawer and set the letter ablaze. The thin paper turned to ash in an instant. "What's wrong?" I asked, bewildered by the scene. Chloe looked up at me and shrugged. "There, it's gone." She came over and took my arm, her voice turning soft and cajoling. "Go on, take a shower and get some sleep. I'll clean this up and be right in. It's been a long day at work. I'm exhausted." She pushed me towards the bathroom. I wanted to say more. She hadn't communicated with me. She had simply ended the conversation with a single, dramatic gesture. She hadn't given me an answer. But seeing the dark circles under her eyes from a week of nonstop overtime, I swallowed my words. The next morning, before she left for work, she gave me a light kiss on the forehead. And then she didn't come home. When I called, she said she'd been sent on a last-minute business trip. That was a month ago. She never came back. I sat in front of the computer, my heart a block of ice. I had received the chat logs an hour earlier from my stepbrother, Alex, a man I'd never gotten along with. His message was casual, flippant. "Wow, your wife is quite the looker." I called Chloe. Unsurprisingly, the call wouldn't go through. I had called her countless times over the past month. At first, no one answered. Then, she blocked my number. She had simply vanished. I was on the verge of calling the police, but I knew the truth. She wasn't missing. She just didn't want to see me. The trench coat she'd hung on the rack the day she left was still there, a silent testament to her abrupt departure. Alex sent a few more messages. A hotel address and a room number. And one more taunt. She sent this to me. "Want to come see for yourself?" I rushed to the hotel. A sliver of hope remained. Chloe was so proud. I couldn't believe she would debase herself like this. Even after seeing those photos, even after a month of silence. I stood outside the room. I could hear a woman's soft moans and a man's guttural grunts from within. The woman's voice, though thick with desire, was chillingly familiar. It was Chloe. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. The sounds inside stopped, and the door opened slowly. I instinctively turned, not wanting to see the sordid scene. Julian, Chloe's first love, emerged, wrapped in a bathrobe. "Julian." I stared at him in disbelief. He looked just as surprised to see me. He glanced guiltily back into the room. At the same moment, the door to the adjoining room opened. Alex poked his head out, a smirk on his face. "Alex." I was stunned. He sauntered over, his voice a low whisper only I could hear. "Do you think she knows I'm your brother? Or did you just never tell her?" His voice was dark and sullen, just like when we were kids. A heavy, oppressive aura emanated from him. I took a few steps back, creating distance between us. Chloe emerged from the room, also wrapped in a towel. It was the first time I had seen her in a month. She was thinner, paler. Her gaze, when it met mine, was colder than ever. You? I started, but the words wouldn't come. For the past month, I had chased after her, arriving at each new location just as she was leaving, as if she were deliberately avoiding me. I looked at her for a long time, finally managing to force out a single question. Don't you have anything to say to me? Her face remained a mask of indifference. Explain what? I thought a month of silence was answer enough. Even for a divorce, there should be a reason. But looking into her cold, empty eyes, I couldn't say a word. Alex clicked his tongue, his eyes raking over Chloe's body with a lecherous amusement. She really does have a great body. He was about to add a crude comment, but a glance at me made him swallow his words with a smirk. I instinctively stepped in front of Chloe, shielding her from his gaze. Even now, I couldn't stand the thought of another man looking at her like that. Chloe saw Alex, and a blush crept up her cheeks. She stammered, What are you doing here? Her reaction confirmed it. The photos were real. I closed my eyes, suppressing a wave of rage. I grabbed Chloe's hand. Come with me. Seeing my agitation, Julian tried to intervene. Let's just talk this out calmly. The adulterer. I shoved him hard. This has nothing to do with you. A sharp push from behind nearly sent me sprawling. It was Chloe. She pulled Julian behind her, glaring at me with venomous eyes. Why did you push him? We're not even divorced, and he's already sleeping with you. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. But seeing the hatred in her eyes, as if I were her sworn enemy, a chill settled deep in my bones. For the past month, I had searched for her everywhere. She had avoided me at every turn. Even her parents were at their wits' end, their calls and messages unanswered. When my career was taking off, she had clung to me, telling me she felt insecure with me meeting so many people every day. So, I quit my job and became a stay-at-home husband while she went to work. Then, she accused me of lacking ambition, so I found another job to help with the bills. And what about her? She disappears for a month, only to reappear in a hotel room with another man, without a word of explanation. And now, she was glaring at me like I was a stranger, not the man she had spent the last 3 years with. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. My heart was frozen solid. Chloe, let's get a divorce. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it was gone in an instant. She immediately turned her attention to a scratch on Julian's arm, sustained during our scuffle. I couldn't bear to watch any longer. I turned and walked away. After the disastrous encounter at the hotel, I went back to our home and found our marriage certificate. Since Chloe had simply vanished, we had never officially divorced. I had once held out hope for her, but now, all illusions were shattered. Chloe still hadn't contacted me, but Alex continued to send me screenshots and screen recordings of her chats. Her suggestive words, her breathy voice messages, her revealing photos, they all made me sick to my stomach. Alex's messages were mocking. She's really coming on to me. Does she even know I'm your brother? Even if we're not related by blood. He sent another message. I typed back, my face devoid of expression. That's your business, not mine. He persisted. Brother, don't you know? She's doing all this for a guy named Julian. She wants me to give him a promotion. But his performance is the worst in the company every month. We were planning on firing him. I never thought he'd be the type to use a woman to get ahead. The irony was crushing. For a man like that, Chloe, you would stoop so low. My resolve to divorce her hardened into steel. Her number was still blocked, so I bought a new SIM card and called her. Her voice was groggy, as if she had just woken up. Who is it? Before I could answer, I heard a man's voice, slightly out of breath, in the background. Who's calling you so early? I knew instantly what she was doing. A wave of nausea washed over me. I spat out the words, tomorrow, 9 a.m., at the Civil Affairs Bureau. For the divorce, and hung up. The next morning, I waited at the bureau for a long time, but Chloe never showed. I called her again. She sounded annoyed at being woken up. What's the rush, Leo? You're the one begging me for a divorce. You think I'm as idle as you, with nothing to do all day? Her words left me speechless. What was she so busy with? Shacking up with Julian? My disgust for this woman had reached its peak. I didn't want to waste another breath on her. Aren't you always with Julian? A divorce would just make things official for you two. I hung up. An hour later, Chloe finally arrived. She was wearing a thin slip dress under a loose wool cardigan, her hair a mess. She looked like she had just rolled out of bed. Julian was trailing behind her. I snorted in contempt, not wanting to exchange a single word with her. I turned and walked into the building. The divorce process was surprisingly smooth. The moment I held the certificate in my hand, a wave of relief washed over me. As we walked out of the bureau, I waved the certificate at her. Good riddance. I turned to leave, but she called out to me. Her expression was hesitant. You really want this divorce? I was stunned. Lady, you're the one who disappeared and started sleeping with your ex. And now you're asking me this? I rolled my eyes without bothering to hide it and walked away. Chloe was still calling after me when Julian rushed over. Chloe, he said, using her pet name, a thick coat in his hands. It's windy today, you're not dressed warmly enough. I had my coat in the car, so I brought it for you. He draped the coat over her shoulders, then shot me a defiant look. I sneered. I wish you two a long and happy life together. Chloe's face flushed with embarrassment. Suddenly, the roar of an engine filled the air. Alex's flashy sports car pulled up to the curb. Chloe's expression turned to panic. She instantly pushed Julian away and shoved the coat back into his hands. Now it was Julian's turn to look awkward. I decided not to leave just yet. I crossed my arms and stood to the side, ready to watch the show. I wanted to see how Chloe would handle this. She ran down the steps and threw herself into Alex's arms as he got out of the car. He caught her, then looked up at me on the steps. And who is this? He asked Chloe deliberately. Chloe looked flustered. I noticed Julian's jaw was tight, his face grim. As Chloe hesitated, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. Juggling 3 men, was this what you wanted, Chloe? Even though Julian and you and Alex all knew the score, you all had to pretend everything was normal. It was utterly disgusting. I didn't want to be a part of this farce any longer. I turned and left. Alex quickly agreed to host a promotion party for Julian. Chloe had gotten what she wanted. He booked the ballroom of a 5-star hotel downtown and invited the entire company, all to celebrate Julian's promotion. It was a grand affair, but he had more in mind than just a promotion. At the party, he was going to propose to Chloe. Chloe didn't know. Julian didn't know. The ballroom was magnificent, a massive crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. The guests were all in formal attire, a testament to the importance of the event. After all, Alex himself had organized it. No one dared to take it lightly. The doors to the ballroom opened, and Alex, in a custom-tailored suit, walked in with Chloe on his arm. Chloe was radiant in a long evening gown, but her eyes were searching for someone in the crowd. I followed her gaze. Julian was standing there, a wine glass in his hand, his expression unreadable as he watched them enter. What a man, I thought sarcastically. Chloe quickly looked away and walked with Alex to the stage. He surveyed the room and spoke, his voice booming. He seemed to be in a good mood. Today, we are here to celebrate Julian's promotion. Let's welcome the man of the hour to the stage. The audience applauded, but their expressions were a mix of admiration and contempt. Alex had been promoting Julian, both openly and behind the scenes, for some time now, much to the displeasure of many. Of course, everyone knew he was only getting ahead because of Chloe. They all despised him for using a woman to climb the corporate ladder. Julian walked onto the stage with practiced ease, standing beside Alex and Chloe. But I saw his hand, at his side, clench into a fist. I watched with interest, curious to see what would happen next. Julian bowed to the audience and was about to speak into the microphone when Alex cut him off. He raised a hand, and all eyes turned to him. Even Julian had to put down the microphone and look at him. Alex's lazy voice drifted through the ballroom. While I have you all here, I have an announcement to make. Then, to everyone's shock, he pulled out a ring box and opened it, facing Chloe. Chloe, marry me. It was a statement, not a question. He didn't even get down on one knee. In his eyes, Chloe wasn't worth the effort. The room erupted in gasps. The looks directed at Chloe were a mixture of envy, resentment, and disbelief. Everyone thought Alex was just playing around with her. No one expected him to actually propose. Some people glanced at Julian. They all knew about Chloe's affair with him. They wanted to see his reaction. Julian's face was a thundercloud, but he said nothing. His hand gripped the microphone so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Chloe was just as shocked as everyone else. She looked from Alex to Julian, her lips moving but no words coming out. She waved her hands dismissively. I saw Alex's gaze turn cold. He leaned in and whispered in her ear. You dare refuse me? I heard Alex's chilling voice through the earpiece he'd given me. He had planted a bug on himself, wanting me to hear every second of Chloe's reaction. Just like when we were kids, he took pleasure in tormenting others. Chloe visibly flinched, her eyes filled with a new fear. She hadn't expected this from him, but I was all too familiar with his cruelty. Alex straightened up and grabbed Chloe's hand, forcing the ring onto her finger. Wear it, he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Chloe tried to pull her hand back, but he held it fast. She looked at Julian in a panic. He scowled, slammed the microphone back onto its stand, and stalked off the stage. The room buzzed with chatter. Seeing him leave, Chloe panicked even more. "Julian!" she cried, her voice echoing through the ballroom. Everyone heard it. The guests were stunned. No one expected her to call out his name like that, especially right after Alex had proposed. It was a public slap in the face. I scoffed internally. So, they were really in love. Alex's playful expression vanished, replaced by a cold fury. In his world, he could play with anyone he wanted, but no one was allowed to humiliate him in public. He squeezed Chloe's wrist, his voice low and dangerous. "Say his name again, I dare you." A pained expression crossed Chloe's face. Alex then pulled her into a rough embrace. "Don't push your luck," he hissed. Then, he smiled at the audience. "The wedding will be next Tuesday. You're all invited." Some of the hotel staff recognized Chloe. They started whispering, "Isn't she the girl from those chat logs?" "Yeah, that's her. She's got a smoking body." Trapped in Alex's arms, Chloe grew more agitated. Julian had paused at the door, but when he heard the whispers, he left without a second glance. Chloe could only watch him go. She struggled against Alex's hold, but he held her fast. The employees in the audience who had seen the chat logs now looked at her with open contempt. The men, in particular, stared at her lecherously. Chloe felt their eyes on her. She stopped struggling and hung her head, trying to hide from their gazes. But Alex wouldn't let her. He held her tightly, his hand under her chin, forcing her to look up, to face every single degrading stare, until she was stripped bare by their judgment. "You dare to leave?" Alex's cold voice whispered. Chloe's face grew redder and redder, tears welling in her eyes. I had seen enough. I slipped out of the ballroom, unnoticed. My father, who was abroad, heard about the impending marriage and rushed back. "Are you really going to marry that woman?" Alex smiled nonchalantly. "Of course." "Nonsense." My father slapped him across the face. "I give you the company, and this is how you run it." Alex slowly turned his head back, his eyes fixed on me. "Well, I could never compare to my dear older brother. But, brother, why did you leave home in the first place?" "Because of you, you psycho," I thought. His mother was the other woman. She had brought him to our home when he was 12, the same year my mother died. The irony was suffocating. My mother was barely cold in her grave before my father brought home a new wife. Before that, his mother had filled his head with stories of how my mother and I had oppressed them, how he had forced her and my father apart. In her version of the story, they were the true lovers, and my mother was just an obligation. And Alex believed her. His mother had been a bar hostess for a few years. Men would often burst into the room while he was doing his homework. His mind had been twisted long ago. He believed that all of his and his mother's suffering was our fault. But my father was never in love with his mother. That was just her delusion. He continued his philandering ways. When Alex was 14, his mother caught my father in bed with another woman. In the ensuing struggle, she fell down the stairs and died from a brain hemorrhage. And Alex, with his warped logic, blamed me for her death. He nearly strangled me that night. He had grown up on the streets with his mother and was surprisingly strong. I couldn't break free. It was only when he had a moment of distraction that I managed to escape. Then he set our family villa on fire. That's when I knew he was a madman, and I had to get away from him. My father would never protect me. I left that night, and soon after, I met Chloe. But I could never truly escape him. Alex was still staring at me. I smiled back. "One day, I'm going to have you committed." Chloe's parents also found out about the wedding and called me in a panic. I didn't tell them we were already divorced. I didn't want to worry them. Her father's voice was firm. "We're having Chloe over for dinner this week. Leo, you'll come too. Do an old man a favor. I'm going to make her apologize to you in person." I went. Chloe's father had always been good to me. Unlike the day we got our divorce, Chloe was there early, but her usual arrogance was gone. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were shadowed with an undeniable exhaustion. When she saw me walk into the private room, she straightened her back, her gaze sweeping over me with disdain. I just smiled and ignored her. I sat down across from her parents. Her father raised his glass to me. "Leo, Chloe has done you wrong. This is from me, on her behalf." I quickly stood up and clinked my glass with his, holding it slightly lower than his as a sign of respect. Before I could speak, Chloe stood up, her voice sharp. "Dad, why are you apologizing to him? He doesn't deserve it." Her father's voice was a low growl. "You be quiet and sit down." Chloe's voice softened, but she remained standing, looking at me with contempt. What man earns so little? Who could respect him? I almost laughed. Wasn't she the one who had said she felt insecure, who had convinced me to quit my job to stay home with her? And now, I was the one with no ambition. But she was right, in a way. I never should have sacrificed my career for a hollow promise of love. And are you so noble? I stared at her, the words on the tip of my tongue. Isn't it disgusting that you would strip for another man for your pathetic first love? But her parents were there, so I held my peace. Chloe looked at me, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Why are you staring at me? I just smiled and sat back down. Her father slammed his glass on the table with a loud bang. The force of it made his beard tremble. Chloe flinched. She had always been afraid of her strict father. I'd like to ask you, he thundered, why you divorced Leo, and why you're marrying another man. You kept such a big secret from us. Do you have any idea how hard Leo looked for you when you disappeared? Her mother, seeing her husband's anger, quickly tried to soothe him, then looked at Chloe reproachfully. Yes, you've been very thoughtless. Look how upset your father is. Chloe's lips trembled. She couldn't say a word. She had always been proud, but she had also been spoiled. She had never been spoken to like this before. She was losing face. Her eyes darted around the room, and then she saw me. It was as if she had found a target for her anger. She pointed at me. What's there to say? I just don't like him anymore. Is it a rule that you have to be in love after 3 years of marriage? He was the one who was always clinging to me. Oh, right, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I forgot your mother died young. You're just desperate for love. That's why you won't let me go. And now you've come crying to my parents. The moment the words left her mouth, I slapped her. The sound of the chair clattering to the floor echoed the sound of her falling. She had crossed a line. My mother's early death was the reason Alex and his mother had been able to enter our lives. In a way, my mother's death and Alex's mother's death were both caused by my father's infidelity. When my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, my father was off with other women. He never once came to see her. I could only watch as she wasted away, dying in agony in a hospital bed. The irony was unbearable. The wounds I had once revealed to the person I thought was my closest confidant were now being used as weapons against me. It took Chloe a moment to get up. Her mother rushed over with a scream and helped her to her feet. Her father stared at me in shock. Chloe's hair was a mess. One side of her face was swollen and red, and there was blood at the corner of her mouth. A piece of her front tooth had even broken off. You dared to hit me? She stammered in disbelief. I didn't flinch. Yes, I did, I said, my voice cold and even. Since we had come this far, there was no need for me to protect her secrets any longer. I smiled, a cruel, mirthless smile. Chloe, why did you divorce me to marry Alex? I'm sure you don't want your parents to know the real reason, do you? The color drained from her face. Her father snapped. What do you mean by that? I didn't answer. I took out my phone and pulled up the chat logs Alex had sent me. Under Chloe's horrified gaze, I held the phone up for her father to see. When the scandal first broke, I was terrified her parents would see the news. I stayed by their side constantly, trying to shield them from it. I even used my family's connections to suppress the story. Thankfully, they didn't pay much attention to that kind of gossip. Now, Chloe watched as her father read every single one of her sordid messages, saw every single one of her half-naked photos. I wondered what was going through her mind. When I first took out my phone, she had tried to snatch it from me, but I had pushed her away. Now, she stood there, trembling, not daring to say a word. Her father's hand, gripping his cane, was shaking. His eyes were filled with disbelief. But the evidence was undeniable. The woman posing so provocatively on the screen was his daughter. You disgraceful girl, he roared. With a thud, Chloe fell to her knees. Dad, I was wrong. But I had no choice. Please forgive me, please. She was a mess of tears and snot, her hands wringing nervously. Her father raised his cane high, his face a mask of disappointment. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He could only gasp for breath. Then, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Her mother rushed to his side. Chloe, who had been kneeling in terrified anticipation of the blow, scrambled to her feet when she heard her father fall and her mother scream. Dad, what's wrong? Her father was hospitalized. Thankfully, it wasn't serious. As for Chloe, no matter how much she suffered, she didn't dare call off the wedding. She was terrified of Alex, and she was afraid Julian would lose his hard-won job. This was the reason she couldn't tell her father. The first thing he did when he woke up was slap her across the face. I have no daughter as shameless as you. Chloe cried out in shock. her hand flying to her stinging cheek. Her mother, though still angry, tried to intervene. Honey, you didn't have to hit her so hard. She then began to gently wipe away Chloe's tears, shooting me a look that seemed to blame me for everything. I found it all incredibly amusing. I waved to the sobbing Chloe. Whether you like it or not, your wedding to Alex is still on. Then, as her face fell, I walked out of the hospital room in a surprisingly good mood. The wedding went on as scheduled. Even if Chloe was unwilling, she had no choice but to marry Alex. On the day of the wedding, everything was ready. The guests were all seated, but the groom was nowhere to be found. Chloe's parents hadn't come either. They were too ashamed. As time dragged on, and Alex still hadn't appeared, the guests began to whisper among themselves. The officiant looked nervous. I was at a loss. What was Alex up to now? He had summoned us all here, only to not show up himself. It was time for the bride's entrance. The officiant had no choice but to take the microphone. Let us welcome our beautiful bride. The doors to the ballroom opened, and Chloe appeared in a white wedding gown. But there was no joy on her face. She walked to the stage and realized Alex wasn't there. Her father wasn't there either. The guests were all staring at her, some of them whispering. A look of humiliation crossed her face, but she said nothing. She lifted her dress and walked down the aisle alone. When she reached the officiant, Alex still hadn't appeared. She was the only one on the stage. The officiant looked uncomfortable. Without a groom, how could the ceremony proceed? An awkward silence fell over the room. The officiant was about to say something to break the tension when the doors burst open. Alex finally appeared, but he was in casual clothes, not a groom's attire. He had a smirk on his face as he walked onto the stage under everyone's gaze. He took the microphone from the officiant and addressed the crowd. Thank you all for taking the time to attend my wedding to Chloe. I now declare that the wedding is canceled. His voice was as flippant as ever, even tinged with a hint of excitement. It was clear this had been his plan all along. A hush fell over the room. Everyone was stunned. Then, a murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Chloe was just as shocked as everyone else. She stood there for a long moment, then hurled her bouquet at Alex's head. Alex, are you playing with me? Petals rained down on him. He brushed them off, then suddenly lunged forward and grabbed Chloe by the throat. His eyes were dark and menacing. Yes, I am. What are you going to do about it? The guests gasped. The officiant rushed to pull him off, finally managing to pry his hands from her neck. Chloe collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. It took her a long time to catch her breath. She looked up at Alex, her voice a hoarse whisper. You've been playing me all along, haven't you? Everyone was silent, watching the drama unfold. Alex didn't answer her. He looked at me in the audience. Brother, why don't you come up and say a few words? Chloe's eyes widened. She looked from me to Alex, her voice barely a whisper. Brother? That's right, Alex said with a wide, malicious grin. Didn't you notice we have the same last name? Chloe crumpled to the floor. She stared at Alex for a long time, then started to laugh, a hollow, desperate sound. You've been playing me from the very beginning, haven't you? She didn't wait for an answer. She just kept laughing, a sound tinged with a deep, tragic despair. Alex ignored her and went to speak to the AV technician. The large screen on the stage flickered to life, displaying a slideshow of photos and videos. They were all intimate pictures of Chloe and Julian. A picture of her on her tiptoes, kissing his cheek under a cherry blossom tree. A video of them passionately kissing in a dimly lit bar, surrounded by a cheering crowd. The timestamps confirmed they were all taken during the month she had been gone. Chloe stared at the screen in horror. Did you think I didn't know you were still sleeping with Julian while you were with me? Alex's voice was sharp. He emphasized the words, with me, with a seething anger. Even if he had just been playing with her, he would never allow her to be with another man behind his back. His ego wouldn't allow it. Oh, and you were cheating on my brother before you were even divorced, he added casually. Chloe watched the images on the screen, her face a mask of despair. She thought they had an unspoken agreement, that they were both just playing a game. But she had forgotten that in this game, she was never the one who made the rules. She scrambled to her feet and lunged at the screen. Don't look. Don't look. Stop it. Stop it. She was frantic, like a cornered animal. The guests looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. Then, she saw Julian in the audience and rushed towards him. Julian, Julian, I did it all for you. You can't just abandon me like this. She clung to his sleeve, nearly falling to her knees, her face streaked with tears. But Julian recoiled as if she were diseased. He pushed her away and took a step back, wiping his sleeve where she had touched it. She tried to lunge at him again, but he kicked her away. This time, he didn't hold back. She collapsed to the floor and didn't get up. Julian scurried over to a lavishly dressed older woman, his expression fawning. He practically groveled, desperate to distance himself from Chloe. "Ma'am, I have nothing to do with her. This woman is shameless. She's the one who seduced me." He held up 3 fingers and swore to the heavens. Chloe lay on the floor, her white dress stained and torn. She was a fallen princess, trampled in the mud. She looked at Julian's sycophantic display and finally understood. "So, you found yourself another sugar mama," she laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. Then, her expression turned venomous. With a determined look in her eyes, she struggled to her feet, grabbed a wine bottle from a nearby table, and charged at Julian. "You shameless freeloader. I gave you everything, and you just cast me aside. I'll kill you." The scene descended into chaos. Julian ran for his life, with Chloe chasing after him, brandishing the bottle like a weapon. Security guards finally intervened, wrestling her to the ground. I had seen enough. I left the hotel. I saw the rest of the story online. The wedding never happened, but videos of the disastrous ceremony went viral. Combined with the chat logs, the online vitriol against Chloe intensified. Some said she deserved it, that she should have seen it coming. Some people even went to her parents' house to harass her. I heard her father was so angry that he disowned her. Chloe was hounded by the media to the point where she couldn't even show her face in public. I never heard what became of her. I went on a trip for a while. It was a way to put an end to this tumultuous chapter of my life, to clear my head. The day I returned, I found someone squatting in front of my apartment door. I got closer and saw that it was Chloe. I had moved out of the house we had shared and found a new place. I didn't know how she had found me. She heard me approach and looked up. Her face was sallow, her eyes bloodshot. She clearly hadn't slept well in a long time. She opened her mouth to speak, her voice cracking on the first word. "Leo." I sighed. "Come inside." Chloe told me everything, her voice choked with sobs. Her personal information, her home address, her ID number, it had all been leaked online. Reporters hounded her, wanting to turn her story into a sensational headline. She couldn't even go home. Every time she opened her phone, she was bombarded with hateful messages. But that wasn't the worst of it. Without any warning, she lifted her shirt. Underneath, her skin was a roadmap of bruises and scars, old and new, crisscrossing her body in a horrifying display. "He beats me," she whispered, her voice trembling with a deep, primal fear. Alex had taken her back. Even though the wedding was off, he had dragged her back to his place and held her captive. "I know you can't even go home right now," he had told her. "I'm helping you, giving you a place to stay." Living with him was like being a rabbit in a lion's den, constantly waiting for the jaws to snap shut. Whenever he was in a bad mood, he would take it out on her. Sometimes it was just insults and slaps. Other times, it was a stick he had found somewhere, brought down on her legs with enough force to feel like her bones were breaking. She had tried to escape, but he had caught her. He had grabbed her by the chin, his eyes filled with a cold, hard malice. "Chloe, you took so much from me. Did you really think you could just run away? There's no such thing as a free lunch." She had finally managed to escape while he was out. I listened to her story, but I felt nothing. I stood up, my face a blank mask. "I'll call the police for you." She suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind, her thin arms like ropes around my waist. Her voice was thick with tears, her chest heaving with sobs. "Leo, can we?" The rest of the words wouldn't come. I knew what she wanted to say. I pried her arms off me and turned to face her, my expression calm. "Chloe, you know better than anyone else. We're over." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, we're not." "Chloe," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. During that first month she was gone, I had prayed for a night just like this, for her to suddenly appear at my door and tell me she was back. But she never did. I had been through a roller coaster of emotions, sadness, anger, regret. I had wanted to grab her by the shoulders and demand to know why. Why she had betrayed me. Why she had put me through so much humiliation when I had been so good to her. But now I understood. When you truly have no feelings left for someone, the only emotion that remains is a quiet, empty peace. Her tears, her repentance, they no longer moved me. The only thought in my mind was that from now on, we were strangers. So I said it again. "Chloe, there's no chance for us." She shook her head, her face a mask of despair, and collapsed to the floor. "No, I'll call the police. When they get here, you'll go with them." You can't stay here. She grabbed my pant leg. I was wrong, Leo. I was a fool. I know now that you were the one who loved me the most. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. She repeated the words over and over again, until they were the only words she could say. I knelt and pried her fingers off me, one by one. Then I stood up and looked down at her tears, at her breakdown, at her pleas, at her utter despair. Keep moving forward, I told myself. Don't look back. Chloe was taken to the police station. They provided her with a temporary shelter to protect her from Alex. But Alex had bigger problems. My father was being investigated for corruption, and with no one to take over the company, and with the board refusing to accept Alex as the new CEO due to his reckless behavior, the family business was on the verge of collapse. Fearing prison, my father fled the country. And with the added charges of kidnapping and assault, Alex had no support left. The man who had once been on top of the world came crashing down. The day the company declared bankruptcy, he jumped from the 25th floor. When I saw the news, I just smiled. My father had ceased to be a father to me the day my mother died. The company had nothing to do with me. With Alex gone, Chloe was finally free. She tried to go home, but her father refused to let her in, saying he didn't want a daughter like her. With nowhere else to go, she went to find Julian. He was living in a cramped, squalid apartment, surviving on instant noodles. After the wedding fiasco, Alex had fired him. And though he had found a rich older woman, she had quickly discovered the truth about his relationship with Chloe and kicked him to the curb, taking back everything she had given him. To make matters worse, her promiscuous lifestyle had left him with an STD. Unemployed, he had taken out loans to pay for treatment. Now, debt collectors were hounding him daily. When Chloe demanded compensation from him, he just laughed. You were the one who was throwing yourself at me. Did you really not see this coming? He tried to shove her out the door. They argued, and in the struggle, she accidentally pushed him down the stairs. He hit his head on the wall, and there was a lot of blood. But the most pathetic part was that Chloe, having no money to pay for an ambulance, just ran away. She didn't even call for help. In the end, Julian bled to death. When she was arrested, Chloe was still making excuses. I thought he was just bleeding a little. I thought he would be okay. On the television, her eyes were vacant. She looked like she had lost her mind. I shook my head and turned off the TV. Chloe, from the day you chose to debase yourself, you were no longer the person you once were. I packed my bag and set off on another journey. Life is a wilderness. I would no longer be bound by the gains and losses of love. From now on, I would only follow my own heart.